Hey there, I'm Kara Chase, and I am really excited to bring you this training just for Ivory Mix members. And so, without further ado, I'm going to make this full screen and let's dive in. All right, today's presentation is all about using data to do less, how to batch your Pinterest content to save you time and make life easy. So you tell me if this sounds familiar. I think most of us as online entrepreneurs working from home can identify with this. You have a crazy to-do list. It feels like it just gets bigger every day. You find yourself posting last minute, whether that is on Facebook or Instagram or Pinterest, wherever you market your business online. You just can't seem to get ahead. You're doing everything on the fly. You feel like you're on a content treadmill. Like you just can't even look up. You're just pumping out blogs or products or social media posts or whatever it is. And you don't have time to really step back and be the CEO. You can't get ahead or even feel like you're caught up. So I want you to imagine having some space to breathe, take some time out, and really rise above your day-to-day and spend some time being able to be the CEO in your business instead of an intern. This is going to give you time for more education and learning. If you're somebody that's a lifelong learner and you love diving into online courses or reading or whatever it is, self-education, I find, is a consistent personality trait with online entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in general. So by being able to save you time and having that space to breathe, you're going to have more time for education and learning. You're going to have time to love on your audience. So paying attention to who's engaging with you or repinning your pins in Tailwind Tribes or on Pinterest, your email marketing, the people that are in your audience that are making the effort to connect with you, you're going to have more time to do things like that. You'll also have time for pet projects. Maybe you have a side hustle for your side hustle or something you're just learning personally that you are enjoying exploring. Things like time to explore your own creativity. Maybe you've taken up watercolor in the last 6 months during quarantine. Or anything, again, that you're just doing to help make you feel better or explore different parts of your personality or your creativity. Those are all things that are really hard to get to and fall off the list when we're on the treadmill and exhausted. So, hey, I'm Kara. I am a Pinterest marketing strategist for online entrepreneurs. I have a very unique journey in my adult and professional life. The shortest way that I can explain it is I started off my professional career at 22 years old as a special agent for the federal government. I was recruited right out of college. Yes, that is true. I'm not making it up. I spent 10 years as a special agent doing all sorts of stuff. And one of the skills that I loved and really was something that I shined in was data. Being able to see patterns, being able to see a whole bunch of information and distill it down into what is actionable, relevant, and useful. Definitely something that has become a skill set I'm thankful for as an online entrepreneur. When I left that career in 2011, another long story short, I ended up becoming the social media manager for the band Megadeth and Dave Mustaine. If you don't know who they are, that's okay. If you were around in the 90s and, names like Metallica and Megadeth and some of those other bands that were big at the time, you might recognize who they are. So my very first job in digital marketing was as the social media manager of Megadeth. And by the time I left after a couple years, I was managing 13 million fans across 17 social media accounts. I was interfacing with Universal Music and tour management and promoters and all sorts of stuff in the music industry that was wild. It was fun. And that was my very first job in digital marketing. Then I went on to create my own digital marketing agency, doing all the things from website building to blogging and email marketing to all social media. And what became really obvious to me was that Pinterest was giving me by far the biggest ROI on my marketing efforts than any other social media platform that I was on, and it still does. So in 2017, I niched into Pinterest marketing, and I've never looked back. So my Pinterest light bulb moment. This was when I realized Pinterest was different. Like I said, I started doing all the things digital marketing and was on that content treadmill. I knew when I went into business for myself that I was going to have to establish my expertise, build out content on my website, do all of those things that we do need to do. And every week I was pumping out a blog and I was going down the checklist of what do you do when you publish a blog? Okay, have we done SEO? Yes. Do we have a good image? Yes. Have I, checked off posting it to Facebook and LinkedIn and Pinterest and Instagram and put it in my email on, for the week, whatever it was. I was going through this checklist and I wasn't looking at what was happening. I was just head down, busy, busy, busy. And what I realized was I needed to stop. I needed to be the CEO and go back to that trained investigator mode and see what was happening. And so I went into Google Analytics for my business, for my website, and I was shocked to discover that about 80% of my traffic was coming from Pinterest. And about 80% of my Pinterest traffic was going to one particular blog. And I realized that I was seeing the 80-20 rule in action. It's called Pareto's Principle, where 20% of my effort was yielding 80% of my results. So I was really only spending about 20% of my effort on Pinterest with all of the other pieces of the digital marketing pie, but Pinterest was giving me literally 80% of my traffic and my results. So that's when I had my light bulb moment. And I knew that I was on to something and I needed to take that information and do something with it. So that is when I realized that Pinterest is a traffic driver. A lot of people talk about how social media is an awareness tool. It is. It's brand awareness. It's where you get out your brand voice and your vibe and you interact with your customers and communicate and all of that good stuff, which is fine. But it's harder to get that traffic from traditional social media. Pinterest is a visual search engine. It has much more in common with Google and even YouTube than it does with Facebook and Instagram. It functions completely differently. It's evergreen. So we've all seen those infographics about how long a piece of social media content lasts. A tweet lasts like 7 minutes, whatever it is. An Instagram post is 24 hours. Facebook is, a day or two or whatever. Pinterest is like months and months and months. And actually, I have not reached the end of how long content can last on Pinterest because that blog that was driving all of my traffic is still, not all, most of my traffic is still one of my top traffic drivers every single month. And it is from a blog I wrote in 2015. So I would say I'm going on 5 years that content has lasted for me as far as making a difference in my business. The other great thing about Pinterest is it's a totally different mindset for the Pinterest user. It's where they go to get inspiration, to be positive, to think about how to do things better. It's a totally different mindset than when you're scrolling through some other social media and you might fall into the comparisonitis or feeling bad about yourself and some of those other things that make social media feel really yucky. We don't have that on Pinterest, which is refreshing and a relief. So where do you even start with your Pinterest marketing? Sometimes it's hard to know. Usually business owners are in one of two positions. Either they have tons and tons and tons and tons of content, and they're like, okay, I have 300 blogs, and the idea of creating a pin for each of my blogs and going through that process is overwhelming. I'm never going to have time to do it. This is just not happening. Or it's a business owner that's brand new, and maybe they have like 2, 3, 4 blogs on their site, and they think, well, I don't have enough content to create consistent pins for, so I've got to wait until I have 100 blogs or whatever it is. Usually people fall into one of those two categories. And I'm here to tell you that neither of those need to stop you from creating a really great, consistent Pinterest strategy. So where do you start? You start with analytics and data. This is the whole point of this presentation. You start with information so that you can do less more efficiently. So analytics is going to tell you what content performs best, and it's going to give you inspiration for more content. So with Pinterest, that is, okay, this landing page or this blog is doing really well and getting traffic from Pinterest. So I want to create some more pins for this particular piece of content. Or you can see if you're repinning other people's stuff and it does really well, it could inspire you to create your own version of that content or something similar that makes sense for your business. So when we talk about, we're going to get into analytics more in depth, but the whole point of this is we're going to take our analytics and then we're going to use it to batch. Batching means you do a whole bunch of work at once so that you have to do it once and you're not taking up bandwidth in your to-do list or your brain for touching base with that every single day. For me, I batch my content and all my clients' content once a month. So once a month, I am dealing with Pinterest, and then I can do other things for my business, like creating more content, hanging out in my membership, doing family stuff. I think about it once a month. So what do you need? You need Google Analytics set up. You need Pinterest Analytics, which means you have to have a Pinterest for Business account. To do the method that I teach and how I batch everything is I use Tailwind, and Tailwind gives you some really great insights as well. And then you're going to want to know two different things about your content planning. So what are your typical monthly themes that you can lay out for the year or the quarter? So it might be things like in your business, you are always talking about New Year's resolutions around New Year's, or you're always talking about, how to take off time in the summer, that kind of thing. What are the things that consistently come up over the course of the months in your business? Or maybe you are just really good with planning and you know that, okay, January, I'm going to talk about content planning. February, I'm going to talk about graphic design. March, I'm going to talk about Tailwind, whatever it is, if you have planned that all out. The last thing you want to know is what content of yours that you've either created or are going to create is evergreen versus timely. So evergreen, for an example, might be 5 things to do after you publish your blog, right? That doesn't matter what time of year it is. It's just something that online entrepreneurs who are bloggers are going to find useful at any time. Something more timely might be how to create holiday gift guides on your blog. I'm shooting off the hip here. So, maybe it's a blog that you want to make sure other bloggers know how to create really great gift guides with affiliate links for their blogs. And they want to do that by like October, November. So, you need to create that in like September. Those kinds of things that are more seasonal and timely content. So let's talk about Google Analytics. I have 3 options for you that you can create to really dive into what's happening with Pinterest specifically and your Google Analytics. So if you go to karachase.com/dashboard, that is a dashboard link that is free that I'm happy to share with anybody. You don't need to put in an email address or anything like that. And you select your Google Analytics property to install it in. And then when you go under custom dashboards in your Google Analytics, you will see a really great dashboard breakdown of where traffic is coming to from Pinterest. You're going to see number of sessions from Pinterest. You're going to see data about Tailwind tribes or promoted pins. It's a really great overview as to what's happening between Pinterest and your website. You could also just go, straight old school with Google Analytics and go to acquisition, social, network referrals and click on Pinterest to see what's happening there. Or you could create a Pinterest segment, which is pretty easy to do. I've got that over on my blog for how to set that up in like 2 or 3 minutes. The point is, you really want to understand what's happening on your website with the user journey and experience from Pinterest to, the rest of your funnel, which is your website. Again, there is the URL to just get their free dashboard that you can install in your own Google Analytics. Okay, so this dashboard is going to tell you the top landing pages from Pinterest. This is something I always look at for what do I want to create more pins for. So I've got a couple blogs that have just done really, really well and have gone viral on Pinterest over the years. So I usually am creating 1 or 2 new pins every month for the same blogs. Any landing pages that I'm tracking, whether on lead pages or my own website, that are doing well, I'll create more pins for. It's also going to tell you what kind of traffic you're getting from promoted pins. It's not the only way to track that. You could use UTM tags and Pinterest analytics as well, but it's also going to give you that breakdown if you are promoting pins or doing Pinterest ads, which is what promoted pins are. It's also going to integrate Tailwind traffic for you as far as what content is being shared on Tailwind that is driving traffic to your website. And here's the one I love in particular, which is the top Pinterest referrals, meaning specific pins. So unless you're using UTM tracking or some other kind of tracking code for each and every pin you put out there, which is like a huge undertaking that nobody has time for, it's hard to know which specific pins are driving traffic. It will most people stop at what landing pages are getting traffic from Pinterest, but it's very useful to know which specific pins are as well. So this dashboard will tell you that. Then we also want to make sure we're looking at Pinterest analytics. So you want to look at the right stats. There's a lot of information in the Pinterest analytics view, but not all of it is relevant as a business owner. I always like looking at the big picture and looking at what's available and then making my own decisions as far as what's useful and relevant for my goals, which is clicks through to my website. So if I had to pick one stat, only one stat that Pinterest could track for me, it would be click-throughs to my website. I do not use Pinterest as an awareness tool like I would use Instagram or Facebook or some other traditional social media platform. Pinterest is a traffic driver for me, and that is how I create my strategy. So really, the only stat I care about in the end is how many clicks am I getting to my website. Number 2, I do want to look at engagement because I want to see how many people are saving my pin. Pinterest is a slow burn and a long-term platform. So people go there at the very, very, very beginning of their buying or awareness or plan journey. So it might be that they save my pin for my Pin Power Roadmap, which is my main lead magnet, but they don't go sign up for it for another couple months. They are just collecting information for building a Pinterest strategy before they make some decisions about what to do. So I do like to have that number tracked so that I know how many people are engaging with my pins. And then now Pinterest has enabled something called Published Pin Analytics, which will tell you how pins are performing based on just the ones you publish. So not repins or ones that other people have pinned or ones people have pinned from your website, any of that. It is just pins that you have published, which is really good information. You also want to make sure that you're claiming your other accounts. So I need to add a number 4 to this, but you can claim your Instagram account, your YouTube account, your Etsy account, and now your Shopify account. What is this and what's the point of this? So Essentially what you're doing is enabling Pinterest to track if someone takes a piece of content from one of these 3 or 4 accounts that you have and pins it to Pinterest. So say I post a really funny quote on Instagram and someone sees that and decides to save that Instagram post to their Pinterest, my Pinterest is going to track that someone saved from my Instagram account to their Pinterest profile. So the reason that's super cool is it's letting you know the content that is crossing platforms as far as audience interest, which is powerful information. Okay, and then the last thing we look at is Tailwind Insights. So the really cool thing about Tailwind Insights is it is the longest term picture you can get with Pinterest. It will tell you your entire Pinterest profile data since you started Pinterest. It's going to give you information on boards, pins, everything you've done on Pinterest. It syncs with Google Analytics and your website, and it does something really cool, which is the Smart Schedule. So Tailwind will integrate with your Pinterest profile and create a smart schedule for you based on when your followers and audience on Pinterest are out there pinning. So if you're in like a totally different time zone than most Pinterest users or most of your Pinterest followers, it doesn't matter because Tailwind is going to know when they are on and they are pinning and serve them your content based on that information. So none of this crazy, like what's the best time to pin when information that you have to try and wrap your head around and stay consistent with. Tailwind does it all for you. So we've gathered a bunch of information. We looked at all of our analytics. We know what content performs the best. We know what we want to be creating content for. So how do you then move it to creating this batching calendar that is going to save you so much time and energy in the long run? So here's a key point that a lot of people miss about Pinterest. It's not about creating more content. It's about creating more pins for the content you have. I say this all the time. Typically, this is a conversation I'm having with the online entrepreneur who only has a handful of blogs, or they're not interested in blogging. They are just a product owner and or product seller, and they have an e-commerce site and they don't want to blog. It's not about having all of these different pieces of content on your website. It's about creating as many pins as you can for the content that you already have. So let's think about your content themes. What are the main topics in your industry? So you think about the problem that you are solving for your audience or your customer, right? So I talk about Pinterest marketing, of course, but in my industry, we're also talking about email marketing funnels. We're also talking about graphic design. And we're also talking about productivity and entrepreneurship. And so it's beyond just, hey, here's how to use Pinterest. It's all of these other things in my industry that need to be taught and people need to know because they need to solve a problem for how to do business better. And then you want to think about what valuable, informative, inspiring content you can provide around those themes. So what to pin when? Touched on this a little bit, but evergreen basically means it's always a good time. There's no dates or launches. It's not about a summit or a dated webinar or anything like that. It's just information that's going to be valuable and useful any time of year. Timely really means more seasonal topics like holidays. This does not just apply to like DIY recipe home decor themes for holidays that you might think of typically when you think about Pinterest. Think about if your business is unrelated to one of those classic Pinterest categories, think about the seasonal things that you do in your business, like organizing your Google Drive or your email inbox and when during the year you might do that. There are definitely certain times of the year where I talk about batching to get ahead. I always talk about it heading into the holidays, so you can take the holidays off. I always talk about it heading into summer, so you can have more time to disconnect in the summertime. Think about the things that you do in your business that is seasonal. And then you can also look at Pinterest trends. This is a great new feature that they have. Caveat is it's not available everywhere in all countries, but you should check and see if you have it. And you can enter in search terms, and it will tell you for the last 12 months the spikes in searches around that keyword phrase and those searches across Pinterest. The key for batching, going back to this whole, it's about creating more pins for the content you have, is you can repurpose the same content over and over with slightly different graphics and verbiage and photos. So you could use different graphic templates for the same blog. A lot of these are similar, whether it's learning Pinterest for business or my roadmap or, whatever it is. I have used different templates for the same piece of content. Don't forget about being able to do mock-ups of downloads or opt-ins or lead magnets, whether it's a video or a PDF or whatever it is. Everybody loves a mock-up. And I know for Ivory Mix, there's a ton of fantastic photography available as a member to be able to do mock-ups. And they are definitely my number one tool when it comes to that. Also, don't forget, you can do screenshots of videos and video pins. So video pins are fairly new, like within the last year or so. And there's some really great ways to do that with Canva and some of the stock photography and the screenshots and the videos and all of that. I can't, this isn't a graphic design course. Kayla has tons of that available here in the membership. But don't forget you have that option as well. And then you could also do quotes pulled from your content. So I am not talking about inspirational quotes. The thing about inspirational quotes is that everybody loves them, but they don't lead to click-throughs on Pinterest. So people will save them all day long. You'll get really good impressions and engagement, but people save them because they're inspiring. It's not necessarily, leading them through to your content. But if you have a great piece of content, whether it's a blog or a podcast or whatever it is, if you pull out a really good quote and you put that on a pin graphic, that can be another way to repurpose your content on Pinterest. So Pinterest wants you to do fresh pins now. A fresh pin is defined as an image or a video that hasn't been seen before. People, when this came out, freaked out because they didn't know what to do about that, as far as how different everything needed to be or not, and what you could get away with and whatever. Tailwind had this image, which is a really, really great example of really one photo and how they were able to create 5 different fresh pins for a single photo by changing up the angle, the orientation, whether they flipped it, zooming in, zooming out, and then doing different text overlays, both in design and the actual verbiage, moving the logo to a different place. These are all considered different pins, even though you really haven't done a lot to change it other than visually. When you combine knowing that, this is how easy it can be with all the resources available as part of Ivory Mix, you have limitless possibilities for creating pins. So don't let the whole fresh pin thing intimidate you. So the other thing you need to know about a Pinterest strategy is that consistency is the number one thing. Yes, they want you to create, fresh pins that are totally keyword rich with best practices and all of this other stuff, but none of that matters if you're not consistent. So the best thing to do, instead of thinking you're going to do 20 fresh pins a day and, pin 1,000 times a month and all of this kind of stuff, if you're really new to this, you're going to burn out really quickly and then you're going to drop the ball and disappear. And no platform likes that, including Pinterest. So My recommendation is to start slow to practice your workflow. So maybe you're only doing 5 pins a day for a month until you kind of get your whole stock photos, Canva, building the pin, putting them out in Tailwind system as really a good workflow in your business. The best way to be consistent is to use a scheduler like Tailwind. I think we can all relate to our schedules and our time and what we're able to do right now being probably totally different than it was 6 months ago, and that you can't count on having the time to sit down and do things manually. That is why I use Tailwind. And then plan and batch. So take the time to sit down and think, okay, for the following month, this is the content that makes sense for me to pin for September. In September, I know I want to be pinning about holiday stuff and getting ready for the holidays. That's how Pinterest is. It's almost like a traditional magazine editorial calendar where you're pinning 2 months ahead of time. You're creating content 2 months ahead of time. And then you batch it. And then you take a break and you go do other things in your business for a few weeks. And then you come back and see how things are going. So if you're going to use Tailwind, which again is my recommendation, key points you need to know. If you don't put in a title for the pin when you create it in Tailwind, the first sentence of wherever the pin is connected to, for a lot of us, that's the blog. For a product seller, that might be the first sentence in the product description. That's going to end up being the title. So you do need to know that. I always recommend creating your own title that you switch up with different keywords and strong calls to action, but you should know that that's how it works if you don't put a title in. You always want to pin to the closest subject board first. What does that mean? That means every board that you have up on Pinterest is going to have a keyword-rich board description. And we know from Pinterest that that board description is going to tell Pinterest where that pin should go in the algorithm and how it should be surfaced in different feeds and searches. So I create a pin on, some aspect of Pinterest marketing. I'm going to pin it to my Pinterest marketing board first, not my brand board, not my social media marketing board, not even my Tailwind board. It has the most to do with Pinterest. That's where I'm pinning it first. You should aim in Tailwind to pin the same pin to 5 to 8 relevant boards per pin. So what's happening is you're maximizing that piece of content, which is the pin. Excuse me. So I have pin 1 when I pin it to my Pinterest marketing board, and then 5 days later, I'm pinning the same pin to my social media marketing board. That's 2 pieces of content, not the same one. There are limits to that as far as what Pinterest wants you to do. A good rule is between 5 to 8 boards to get the most out of a single pin. You want to fill in your Tailwind queue gaps from Tailwind tribes if you're a part of tribes, group boards if you're using group boards, and search. So maybe you have a great board on email marketing, but you haven't created any content for email marketing. You can go into Pinterest and search for some great pins about email marketing to pin to that board so that Pinterest knows it is an active board. So those are 3 different ways you can curate content besides your own to put in your Tailwind queue. So let's do some math about batching and why this is so amazing. So you've got one piece of content, say it's one blog, that's either new or updated. So I've got a blog that's a brand new blog. I'm going to bring this back over here. Hang on. Oops. And this back over here. Nope, that didn't work. Sorry, I'm on 2 screens. Okay, so I've got one blog. It doesn't matter whether it's new or updated, but I'm going to create a pin for that per week. I like to, it doesn't always happen this way. Sometimes it's by the month, but when I'm doing really well, I like to batch by the quarter. So I like to batch for 3 months at a time. I mean, imagine how much free time that would give you if you had all your Pinterest done and scheduled for 3 months, one time. So literally you're dealing with creating Pinterest content 4 times a year. So you've got 12 pieces of content for the quarter. You want to create 9 pins per piece of content. So that is using different stock photography or brand photography, different Pinterest templates. You know, maybe some are mock-ups, maybe some aren't. All those different things that you can do in Canva or Photoshop if you use Photoshop to create fresh pins. So 12 times 9 is 108 pins. And if you use those pins on 6 different boards each, you're going to have 648 pins to work with for the quarter. That is 216 pins a month of your own content, or 7 pins a day of your own content. This does not include repins or curated content. So say your queue is 10 pins a day or 15 pins a day. We know that most or half of that content queue for the day is going to be your own stuff. And that is for 3 months. So if you want to do more than that, to have more to work with, you know, you just play with these numbers. Maybe you do 12 pins per piece of content because you only want to pin 2, 3, or 4 boards each. However you want to slide those numbers up and down makes it real easy to plug in what you need to do. So that is how you batch so much of your Pinterest content at the same time to use data to do less and free up more time for your business. So if you're ready to know how to do this really in depth with a whole community of support, you want to look at joining Pin Power Method. We dive into Tailwind and batching and content queues, everything from Pinterest best practices all the way to creating traffic and conversion campaigns in Pinterest. We go through all of it. We also talk about all the other pieces of your marketing funnel that you need to know, such as email marketing and lead magnets, and some of the other things you'll have to have in place to really take advantage of your Pinterest traffic. One of my awesome members shared this with us, that she finally scheduled her first batch of pins to Tailwind, and she's put it off because she was overwhelmed and didn't know what to do. And she was so happy to create her first batch and be able to step away and do other things in her business. And then I have a total rock star member who has actually batched her Pinterest content for an entire year. I haven't even done that. She almost has become the teacher because she's taken what I have taught her and done it like way more than I've ever done it before. So she has her Pinterest content, because she is all evergreen and she is a product seller. She has created enough pins for her Tailwind queue for an entire year. So if you have any questions, if you want to know more, then go ahead and hit me up. Pinterest is a Pin Power Method is a membership where I have open and closed door throughout the year. If you are watching this, you are invited, if Pin Power Method is closed, to get a backdoor link to slide in while the doors are not open. Just email me and I will shoot that over to you. If you have any questions at all about how to use the right data to batch your Pinterest content and do less, so you can have more energy and more time to get back to the things you love about both your business and your life. I hope this has been super helpful. And thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you later.